Hi. Okay, so 2 weeks ago during my weekly Sunday stream, someone made this argument to me about the Bible and Noah's Ark.
True, like Noah's Ark story. Do you believe in the story of Noah's Ark?
From what I've seen, I wouldn't consider it as true.
If a book that's thousands of years old, if you're finding archaeological things in the ground, archaeological fact that support what this book says, would you take this book to be true?
Well, not the book itself, but if, for example, if the book says there was a big boat 5,000 years ago, and then we find pieces of boat and that are dated 5,000 years ago, I would say that the fact that there was a boat 5,000 years ago is true. But whose boat it was, what the purpose of that boat was, I cannot say that this is true.
What if in the Bible it says this boat is going to be landed on a specific mountain in a specific area, and then we're finding a huge boat in a specific mountain in the same specific area? Would that be credible evidence of the story?
Not the story itself, just the fact that there was a boat.
Oh, so it's just a huge coincidence. I think you're being dishonest with yourself.
Okay. Now, I wasn't quick enough to respond intelligently to what he said, but it's actually a very interesting question if you think about it. What would it take for me to genuinely believe in Noah's Ark? Would discovering pieces of the boat in the exact location mentioned in the story be enough? What if we had undeniable evidence of Noah's existence or proof of a global flood 7,500 years ago? Would that make it believable? These types of questions I feel are often overlooked by religious people because whatever is in the Bible is true or completely dismissed outright by atheists like myself. But I think the answer to this question can better help us create a foundation for believing in as many true things and as few false things as possible. So if you're curious like me, keep watching because we are going to try to answer this question together. Now, before we start, let me just give you a quick 1-minute summary of Noah's Ark story in my own way. A long time ago, the earth was full of sinners and evil, so God said, I gave you free will, and this is what you do with it? Now I'll wipe everyone off the face of the earth. But Noah said, wait God, I'm not sinful. I'm the only one around here who's righteous. Let me and my sons live. Then God said, alright, fine. Build an ark made out of gopher wood with 3 decks and 1 door. Bring your wife, your sons, and their wives. And also bring 7 pairs of all the clean animals, 7 pairs of all the birds, and 1 pair of all the unclean animals. But for the rest of earth's creatures, let them die. They are all going to suffer for the evil in their hearts. So Noah and his family built the ark, brought in all the pairs of animals, and when they were done, God flooded the entire earth until every high hill was covered. The flood lasted 150 days, then the water came down and the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. Then God said, alright Noah, it's your time to shine. I won't flood the earth ever again, I promise you. So you and the animals need to get busy and repopulate the earth. So now apparently we are all descendants of Noah and his family. The end. Okay, so in this video, I won't talk about the evidence that was or wasn't found for Noah's Ark because first, it would take way too much time, and second, I don't think it's the most interesting aspect of this discussion. Instead, I'll take a step back and discuss something broader. How should you judge a story like Noah's Ark, and how can you get as close to the truth as possible? Let's begin with what the person in the clip said. Would finding pieces of a boat at the location where the story claims the ark came to rest be enough to believe it? Well, it might be if fiction didn't exist, but it does, and fiction often incorporates real-world objects or locations, so we cannot really trust what people write because they lie, they invent, and exaggerate. Imagine an apocalypse wipes out civilization, and 5,000 years later, someone unearths a copy of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone buried in the sand. They read it, think it's an interesting story, and move on. But then archaeologists excavating ancient London uncover remnants of a sign reading platform 9 3/4, along with half of a luggage trolley. Would finding those items prove the events in the book actually happened? If you were the guy that I talked to, maybe you would say, bro, they found this sign at the exact same location that the book said it was going to be found. How can you deny the evidence, bro? But by switching Noah for Harry Potter, it's easier to understand why this type of evidence is not enough. At most, finding the sign and the trolley would tell you that the book referenced something that was real. In this case, it refers to the real fact that Harry Potter was so popular that they decided to build this tourist attraction for fans. So this evidence is not enough to claim wizards once existed or that a hidden magical world is real. To believe something so extraordinary, you'd need far more compelling and irrefutable evidence. So if pieces of the Ark are not enough, how do we figure out whether this story is true or not? Well, the main challenge in determining whether a historical event is true or not is that we can never have all the evidence needed to know exactly what happened. We are not omniscient, and we don't have camera footage of past events. Given this limitation, our best approach is to find the most plausible explanation that accounts for all the available facts. So let me introduce you the three main criteria historians use to determine the best explanation. Some use additional criteria, but sticking to these three will keep things simple and clear. So the first one is explanatory scope. It is the amount of facts that the explanation can account for. So the more facts it can account for, the better the explanation. The second is the explanatory power. It's how well the explanation accounts for all the facts. And the last criteria is plausibility. It's how well the explanation fits with our knowledge of the world outside the facts to be explained. Here's an example that clearly illustrates how to apply these criteria when judging an explanation for an event with missing information. This example comes from the book Unreasonable Faith by James Fodor. Imagine you come home from work to find a broken vase on the floor and your cat with wet fur. There are several possible explanations for what happened, and since you weren't there, you cannot know for sure which one is true. However, you can evaluate the different explanations using the three criteria and choose the most plausible ones. Let's consider two possible explanations. The first one is that the vase was placed too close to the edge of the table and a small breeze caused it to fall and break. This explanation has some explanatory power, as it's likely that a vase could fall if positioned near the edge. However, it lacks both plausibility and explanatory scope, since it's unlikely the vase would remain perfectly balanced until after you left, and it doesn't account for the cat's wet fur, unless it just, happened to pass by at exactly the right moment. The second explanation is that the cat bumped the table, causing the vase to fall and the water splash onto the cat as it broke. This is a much stronger explanation. It has better explanatory scope because it accounts for both the broken vase and the wet cat without relying on implausible scenarios, and it's also more plausible because from our knowledge of the world, we know that cats frequently knock things over, making this explanation far more likely to explain the event. Let me add a third explanation just to be really sure that you understand the three criteria. The third explanation given could be that an alien teleported into your house when you left, took the vase, and smashed it on your cat. This explanation has a very good explanatory scope because it explains both facts that the vase is broken and the cat is wet. It has very good explanatory power because if it really did happen, then this explanation explains perfectly both facts, but it has very poor plausibility because teleporting aliens are not part of our knowledge about the world. So even though the second explanation is the most plausible, it's still possible that the first or the third explanation is correct. Unfortunately, we can never know for certain. To function as a rational human being, you have to make decisions and form beliefs even if you're not 100% sure. For example, we cannot know for absolutely certain that the sun will rise tomorrow or that we won't just cease to exist. But we live as though it will because that's the most reasonable assumption. The same applies to historical events. There are some events that we cannot be 100% sure that they happen, but in history books, they will write the most likely explanation for all the facts. And sometimes historians will let you know by saying, hey, this is most likely what happened because of this fact, or this is the best theory we have. So for something like Noah's Ark, right? The process would involve compiling all the proven facts, such as the discovery of both pieces, and then developing possible explanations. From there, you would evaluate those explanations using the three criteria I outlined earlier. One explanation could be that the biblical story is entirely accurate and the boat pieces are indeed from Noah's Ark. Another plausible explanation might be that floods occur regularly, and for ancient civilizations unaware of Earth's place in the cosmos, a massive flood that wiped out most of their population could have been perceived as a global, divine event. Over time, as generations passed, these these events could be written into stories, becoming more embellished and detached from reality. In this case, we don't even need to go through the first two criteria to determine the best explanation. All we need to do is assess the plausibility of each explanation based on what we already know. From what I've read, the idea that we are all descendants of Noah, as suggested by the first explanation, is highly implausible. So, without diving into further research, I would say, for me, that the second explanation is far more plausible. This method of evaluating historical events is also useful for assessing conspiracy theories or just all theological interpretations of history. For example, in the book Unreasonable Faith, which I mentioned earlier, the author applies these three criteria to evaluate two different explanations for the facts surrounding the resurrection of Jesus. Ultimately, the goal isn't to have all the answers because we can't. The goal is to have a process that leads you to believe as many true things as possible and as few false things as possible. So if you agree or disagree or just want to share your thoughts, feel free to leave a comment below or join me on one of my Sunday live streams to discuss it directly. I'd love to hear what you think, honestly. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next week.